Hello, my name's Sheena McGuinness and I'm a corporate tax partner at RSM, leading our specialist renewables and cleantech team in the UK. Welcome to Renewables Unwrapped, our series of short videos where we'll be unwrapping tax, accounting and consulting issues for the renewables industry. Today, we're taking a closer look at transfer pricing and how this can impact renewables businesses. I'm joined by my colleague, Paul Minness, transfer pricing specialist here at RSM. Paul, thanks so much for joining me today. Perhaps we can start with you telling us a bit about yourself.
Of course, thanks, Sheena. I'm Paul Minness, a specialist transfer pricing partner here at RSM. I advise clients on their transfer pricing and thin capitalisation needs. I joined RSM in 2020, but have been supporting groups with their transfer pricing needs for over 20 years now, covering all types of transactions across a wide range of industries.
Thank you, of which renewables is one because we work together on a lot of my clients. Thin capitalisation does come up a lot within the renewables sector, but it would be really helpful if you could give us a quick recap on what transfer pricing is and how it's typically relevant within the renewables space.
Absolutely. Simply put, transfer pricing means that any transactions between group members need to be conducted as though they were on an arm's length basis. That is on the same terms as two independent businesses would operate. In the renewables sector, the main group transactions that we generally have to consider are in relation to the provision of management services, project management fees, and interest arising on shareholder debt. Of these, the question as to what amount of interest can be claimed in a borrower's tax return, usually referred to as thin capitalisation, is probably the most important question for projects. This is because it directly impacts the level of tax deduction available and can, in some instances, impact the financial viability of a project.
Great, yes, and obviously renewables is a very capex heavy sector. You have a lot of outgoings up front, so that in turn requires quite heavy funding both in terms of debt and equity. So if you can talk us through how the general transfer pricing regulations that you've described do apply within the renewables businesses looking at new finance arrangements, that would be very helpful.
Okay, well, as you say, renewables projects are generally very capital intensive and may not be income generating for many years. That means that forecasts are often modelled out for a very long period, and the project's financial viability can be significantly impacted by the level of interest deductions available from a tax perspective. Given this, the businesses will need to take a view on both their future senior debt interest costs, but also their related party interest costs. And it's not only the new projects that need to consider the impact either. If an existing project has a refinancing, either in relation to its senior debt or its shareholder debt, that's what we call a retesting event. In thin capitalisation purposes, that retesting event means the borrower will have to reassess their overall borrowing position.
Okay, so that's all well and good for new projects and a refinancing, and we do see that quite a lot within the renewables space. What about historical arrangements where the developer might have been able to avail themselves of a lower interest rate, and now obviously the interest rates are only going in one direction for the foreseeable future? So is there anything that these lucky renewables folk need to consider here, or is it that they just need to sit back and be smug about their low cost of capital that they've obtained?
Well, I'm not sure they can be smug. However, where there's a historic arrangement in place, there's no immediate need to undertake a complete refresh of their thin capitalisation analysis. On the face of it, historic arrangements will continue to operate in accordance with the terms of the borrowing agreements put in place. We would expect that the tax allowable amount of shareholder debt to have been determined when that loan was put in place. This may not be the case, though, if the project isn't operating at the forecast levels, perhaps due to inflationary pressures such that the business is now generating less cash. If the results have sufficiently deteriorated, we'd expect the lender to renegotiate the terms of their agreement and potentially enforce stricter covenants or even introduce more frequent reporting and financial testing. In the extreme scenario, a lender will look to call in the debt. This means that in the worst case scenario, it may be necessary to assume for tax purposes that a related party shareholder loan would have been called in by a lender.
Okay. So, and you mentioned reporting requirements and maybe those increasing, etc. And that is something that is often front of mind for directors, the debt covenants, the reporting requirements, the terms of legal agreements, all those sorts of things. Are you seeing anything there that people should be aware of? And have you got any recommended actions?
Well, Well, as I said before, we would expect existing arrangements to continue as before, so legal agreements would continue to operate as they've been implemented. However, if those loan terms include floating interest rates, the terms mean that there will be an impact on the business as the cash flow position of the projects is likely to have worsened. That could potentially impact on the overall ability to afford the debt. Businesses will be monitoring the compliance with any financial covenants, leverage, cash flow available for debt service that exist within their senior loans. If it finds that those covenants are coming under stress or renewed scrutiny from the lenders, it's reasonable to assume that shareholder debts would equally be under stress from lenders in an arm's length scenario.
Okay, thank you. That's been really helpful. Whistle-stop tour of something that is reasonably complicated and very much relevant for the renewables sector. But just to finish off, do you have any final thoughts?
Well, clearly businesses are still having to adapt to the current financial market following a long period of very low interest rates that we've enjoyed. But I would say in summary that it's important for them to consider not only their external positions, but also their internal lending positions, as transfer pricing does aim to replicate those external scenarios. And finally, it's worth noting that HMRC are currently undertaking a consultation programme in respect of certain aspects of the transfer pricing rules, including financial transactions. It's unlikely there'll be wholesale changes to the rules, but it does demonstrate that this area of transfer pricing will continue to be an area of HMRC focus.
Okay, watch this space. Well, thank you, Paul. That's been a really helpful overview. At RSM, we have many years of specialist experience working in the renewables and clean tech businesses. Please do get in touch with me or visit our website if you'd like further information.